All right, now we have Desomd Majekodunmi, an environmentalist, joining us this morning to talk about flood policy and governance, institutional roles and responsibilities. Good morning, Desomd Majekodunmi. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Good morning to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's delve straight into the business of the day. I'm sure you've seen what happened in Lagos, some parts of Lagos and Ogun State yesterday in regards to the flooding, the heavy rainfall that was experienced in those states. And I would like to ask, just to go straight to the point, what are some of the key policies and regulations that are governing flood management in, let's start with Nigeria as a whole?
Yeah, the most important ones are just to ensure that you have adequate drainage systems in place because rain will always fall, and sometimes the rain will fall very heavily. And if the rain falls heavily, the water has to go somewhere. So where is it going to go? The logical place is in the drains. It's better that the water goes into your drain than into your house, which is what happens in so many places because the drainage system is not adequately developed to make sure that the water is evacuated effectively. So yeah, that's the bottom line. But it goes a lot deeper than that though, because you have to work with nature. And the challenge that we're having, not just in Lagos, not just in Nigeria, Africa, but globally, is that so much of humanity have a unbridled arrogance, possibly because of the development of technology. We've been able to do some, wonderful and marvelous things. And that arrogance, it tends to make us feel that we can override and manipulate nature. To an extent, you can. But there's certain things that if you do them against nature's natural systems, and flood relief is something that nature has always been able to develop within her own natural systems. If you do it in a way that is harmful to nature, she hits you back.
Right.
In fact, the question I ask you in the studio is, do you know anybody that can plant cassava and harvest cocoyam?
No.
Absolutely not.
You
No.
reap what you sow.
Right.
Yeah. It's so good to see you, Desomd. And I like your backdrop. You talked about nature earlier on. This is it, nature, right? It's a natural habitat, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We are actually creatures of nature, even though we're obviously a very very advanced species in a lot of ways. In other ways, we're not so advanced at all, because again, we allow pride and arrogance and all kinds of selfish connotations to override us. Whereas all the other creatures of nature, they live in harmony with nature. And this is our challenge. We need to start learning very, very rapidly because we're causing very, very serious damage now to the environment. And whilst, the word is environment, but the reality of what it is our life support system. And it's not just our life support system, it's a life support system that we're holding just for a while, but we have to hand it to the next generation. So it's our children's life support system, and we're playing around with this. We're causing problems that is making nature having to fight back.
Right.
So yes, we need to really.
Nature fighting back. Is flooding an example of nature fighting back?
Yes, it is, and to sometimes no. Okay. You will always have heavy rains.
Yeah.
Throughout history, we've always had heavy rains, but because of what we've been doing, what they call anthropogenic pollution of the atmosphere. And, when you think about it, the Earth's atmosphere is an incredible system. It's a miraculously interwoven combination of different gases. You have the oxygen there, you have the carbon dioxide there, you have the nitrous oxide there, you have the H2O, that's the water vapor there, but they're all there in very specific amounts, specific ratios. And this is what makes this Earth habitable. And we're talking of a tiny dot in space, but it's the most wonderful dot in space. It's the only habitable one that we can see, and we're able to see quite a lot now. So the reality is that we've caused too much pollution into that atmosphere, particularly with greenhouse gases like the CO2. And this is heating up the atmosphere. 2023 was the hottest year ever recorded by humanity. And we've been recording this for a long time. Oh, yes. And the scientists warned us about 20 years ago that this is what would happen. Now, it's very, very simple, basic science. You learn it in your kitchen as a child, that when you add heat to water, you get more evaporation. If you're going to have more water vapor in the atmosphere, it's going to fall as rain. So we're heating up the waters of this planet. We're actually inciting heavier rains.
Right.
So those heavier rains will cause flood.
Right. You know, talking about flooding now, let's come down to what we saw, using what we saw yesterday as a case study. Now, how or what are some of the strategies that different levels of government, I'm talking about national, state, and local levels of government, what are some of the strategies that they need to put in place to properly coordinate flood management efforts?
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, the first strategy is actually to sensitize us as individuals about how we need to manage our waste more effectively. If we feel that, okay, because this one not dirty, I could just throw it out for gutter, blocks the gutter, then obviously the gutter will not be able to play its role to carry off the water, and you will have a flood. And we really, really need to take cognizance of this, because the reality is that, again, as we alluded to earlier, what you sow is what you reap. So you as an individual, you might be throwing rubbish into the gutter, and that's what you sowed, and what you sowed caused the flood, and that flood went and killed a baby or went and caused terrible damage somewhere. It's upon you. God is not mocked whatsoever you sow. So yeah, government needs to really, really, sensitize us, and we need to, get a hold of that reality. But likewise, the people in governance, they have to appreciate that they are making decisions and they're taking actions that can affect thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of people. So they better be sure that those decisions are decisions that will impact positively on those people. Otherwise, they also will get the retributive action of those decisions. Either they'll be cursed or they'll be blessed if they do the right thing. So government needs to ensure that sufficient funds are deployed to make sure that the drainage systems are effectively maintained and managed, and in fact developed in such a way to accommodate the extra rain that's coming. Because whether we like it or not, as we said earlier, we've caused more heat in the planet, global warming, so we're going to be having much heavier rain over the years to come for the next few decades. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And particularly in Lagos, with the waters rising, because when you heat the water body, it expands, it rises, and you're also melting giant ice caps in different parts of the world. So you're going to have ocean rise as well. And government has a very, very important role to play. Again, they need to maybe understand the job description a bit better, because they're called civil servants. Yeah. So they're there to actually serve the civilian population. And if you don't ensure that the civilian population that you're supposed to serve are protected from things like floods, which are going to come, then whoa, you're going to be taking a very, very heavy retributive reaction of that. So yeah, government needs to ensure that they have those things in place. But also, In Lagos, a lot of Lagos is what they call mangrove, like the Lekki area. It's swamp. It's like potopoto. It's what they call potopoto. And maybe because that's the meaning, it has an important role to play. And then when you're just standing and doing too much development there, definitely you're going to have problems again. Those areas need to be preserved, and they're not being preserved. Why not?
That's a billion-dollar question. Now, I want you to react to something. There's one of the headlines Sarah read earlier on, that a pupil in one of the states was swept away by the flood yesterday. Now, you talked about job description earlier on. There's an agency called the National Emergency Management Agency, right? How would you rate their responses so far to emergencies when it comes to flooding?
Yes, we've seen the pretty good response from the Emergency Management Agency, given the limited resources that they have. And, I don't know the details. I don't know if the budget that is allocated to them corresponds with the resources available to them. There's a possibility, because it's happened in many other areas, that the budget was not judiciously spent, or even got to where it was meant to get to in terms of the allocation. But this is pure speculation. I don't have the figures in front of me. But I've seen those guys actually do some pretty brave, some pretty good stuff, like our fire services as well. There's some pretty good people in the system. But there's only so much they can do. Again, depending on what facilities they have available. And I would imagine, knowing that Lagos is, water-rine area, river-rine area, ocean on one side, lagoons on the other side, that they would have a lot of water-going vessels and so on, and dinghies, and they'd be prepared for that. But generally, they, as I say, they seem to be trying, Shah. But given the situation, they need to try a lot harder.
Right. Talking about trying harder and how they're making effort. How about those in, let's talk about those in low-income communities, those that are vulnerable. What are some of the other methods or mechanisms that can be put in place to reach out to these people? We have people that are staying in these riverine areas, not because they want to, for some of them. So how can they also be factored in and considered during cases like this?
Yes, this is a huge challenge, and it actually glaringly highlights one of the major faults in our societal systems, and not just the Nigerian societal system. In fact, to be honest, in days gone by, in our grandparents' times and so on, and behind that, the community would always ensure that they did their best to take care of each other. But these days, with the systems that we've gravitated into, there's clearly tremendous amount of selfishness in terms of those who have, no matter how they got what they have, are very hesitant to distribute what they have to the have-nots, despite the fact that a lot of the have-nots were not able to have simply because they were not empowered with the ability to have. And you can look at specific areas like our public education systems, which have become pretty run down and pretty decrepit. And ironically, a lot of the haves were able to take advantage of those systems when the systems were more effective. And you need to have a bit of knowledge in order to be able to empower yourself to do things. So yeah, it highlights a huge default, which we sort of alluded to a bit earlier, in terms of we humans. And basically what has happened is that we've reached a point now where humanity is obliged to have a transformation, a renewal of our minds into far more caring, compassionate, loving creatures, simply because the expression or lack of expression of this has brought us to this hiatus with nature. And we are expressing far too much of the negativity against nature, and nature is giving it back. Or can I ask you a question? As a child, would you ever dare to think of slapping your mother?
No.
No,
No
not
way.
at all. Especially in this climate
What?
we find ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to slap a Nigerian mama?
Ah.
Forget it. And nature is the overall mother. And that's what humanity has been doing, in different kinds of ways, slapping Mother Nature. So she's like, slapping us back into place and saying, look, change your attitudes, be far more caring, loving creatures. So yeah, the people in the marginalized areas, the have-nots, one's heart really, really goes out to them. And we just hope and pray that the various institutions of governance and also the religious institutions, they can make an outpouring into those areas and try to bring some relief and try to bring some comfort, because in this particular time of economic hardship, things are really, really being exacerbated. So now is the time to prove ourselves that we are really followers of the scripture, which both the major scriptures in this country are very, very clear. One scripture says that we should love our neighbor. The other scripture says, peace be unto you. So let's bring that peace into our neighbors' lives. Let's bring that love into the lives of those people who are suffering the most.
Right.
Well.
It's such a very beautiful way to sum up all this: peace and love.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Desomd Majekodunmi, for joining us this morning and for sharing your thoughts with us on this issue that has to do with flooding. It's been a delight speaking with you this morning.
Thank you very much. Peace and love to both of you.
Yes.
Peace and
And all
love
your
to you
Same
too.
to you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
You know, I like where this conversation ended.